the English term, but they also define the refugee in those different three ways. One should be outside their own country. Then two, has a well-founded fear of persecution due to their race, religion, nationality, social group inclusion, political opinion, and then is also unable or unwilling to return. So the different refugee definition can qualify by all. They are migrants, those who voluntarily leave their own country to make a new life in another country. Then asylum seekers, those who have fled, like killing only, can be killing, discrimination, physical abuse, and all that, but have not had, so the asylum seekers have not had their claim processed. They are still applying. One remains an asylum seeker until their protection status has been confirmed or determined. Then internationally displaced person. We usually use the word IDP. IDP is for internally displaced. So internally displaced, you're within your country. So for someone to qualify as a refugee, they should be internationally displaced. They should have crossed borders. Then the stateless persons. Stateless persons are those without any national recognition. No nation recognizes them as their own citizens. So for the global data, according to the June 2022 report from the UNHCR, there are approximately 89.3 million refugees, 89.3 million people who are displaced worldwide. This report was having data at the end of 2021, and of those 89.3, we see there are refugees under UNHCR. UNHCR is United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. It reports under its mandate there are 21.3 million. Then the Palestinian refugees under UNRWA, sorry, that's United Nations. United Nations Relief and Works Agency. This is specifically for Palestinian refugees. Then internally displaced people. Now these are internally, not the internationally. The internally displaced people are 4.6 million. Venezuelans displaced abroad, 4.4 million. Of these refugees, they are classified in these age groups. These are their demographics. 0 to 17, they account for a total of 41%. 20% are females, 21% males. Then 18 to 59, 26% female, 27% male. Then 60 and above, we have 2% female and 3% male. This is the different data which shows us their origin and host. So the origin is their original country, then the host is those people who are hosting them, who are giving them the refuge. 69% originated from just 5 countries. We have from Syria 27%, Venezuela 18%, Afghanistan, and then Southern Sudan and Myanmar. Then the others all account for 31%. The major sources, these are now their original countries. Syria, as we see, 6 point. Now these are the absolute figures, 6.8 million, 4.6 million, Afghanistan and all that. Then the host countries, we have, these are grouped in income status. High income, 17%, low income, 22%, low to middle, 21%, upper to middle income, 40%. So of all the host countries, we have Turkey. It has the highest global hosting capacity for refugees, up to 3.8 million refugees registered. Colombia, 1.8. Uganda is there, the third, 1.5 million refugees, Pakistan, and then Germany. Maybe something to note, and among all the countries which host refugees, Lebanon has the highest per capita refugee population in the world, like per head. And of all the 12 countries which host refugees, it's only Germany that is a high income country. One would call like a first class country which hosts refugees. And it's the only country that hosts refugees, but they are not from its neighbors. Yes, that is my part. Vicky, you can take over from there.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. African situation. So we have seen that around 30 million internally displaced persons and refugees, asylum seekers live in Africa. We came up with some causes, some major causes which cause people to become refugees. And the first one is war. As we have seen of lately, war is a major cause of refugees worldwide and also in Africa. Countries like Syria, Somalia, Sudan, very many people have run away from those countries due to mass killing of people and war. And we also have climate change. Climate change is also a major cause of refugees due to droughts. Very many people run away from their countries like Somalia, Eritrea, due to lack of food, lack of water. They cannot farm the land. There is a lot of drought. There is no water. Their animals are dying. So these people are forced to go to neighboring countries. Another major cause of refugees is persecution. Persecution can be identified in very many different forms. Like there is social persecution, there is religious, especially the religious ones. Very many people have been killed in different countries due to their religious beliefs. If you're a Muslim, you're being killed. So these people, they are forced to flee from those countries to go and find refuge in another country. There's also violation of human rights. In some countries, you find that some people who are in power or some people who are rich, they violate those who are poor. So these people, they are forced to leave those countries in search for better countries whereby their human rights will be respected. There is also financial hardships, like in Venezuela, whereby very many people were poor and were forced to leave the country. They cannot afford accommodation. They cannot afford education. They cannot afford medical services. So due to those financial hardships, very many people had to leave and go to other countries. And also hunger. Hunger is one of the major causes of displacing some people from their countries permanently to go and find refuge in other countries. Then there is also gender and sexual orientation. Now, like especially among the homosexuals, very many countries have people who are hostile and they don't support people of the same sex to have relationships. So some people have been forced to leave their countries because of killing, hanging of those people, because in some countries they don't respect their sexual choices. Next slide. Origin and host countries. Like in Africa, one of the very large communities that host refugees is Chad. We find that Chad is a host community in Africa, hosting refugees from various countries like Sudan, because very many countries around Chad have been undergoing insecurity, killing of people, war like Sudan. So those people find refuge in Chad. We also have the Democratic Republic of Congo. Apart from the fact that it's one of the countries which has been having insecurities, especially in the Kivu region, Tanganyika, Kivu region and other regions. And very many people have fled from the country, apart from the fact that very many people have fled from the country due to insecurities into maybe Uganda and other countries. The DRC is also a very large host community which has received refugees from another country, especially Rwanda. After the genocide, very many people were hosted in the DRC. We also have Ethiopia. It's having very many refugees, over 800,000, from receiving people from Sudan, Eritrea, Somalia. Next slide. So Sudan, being a very large country, has been undergoing insecurities, especially South Sudan. So before that Sudan was separated, due to those insecurities, very many people left the country. And until today, the country is unsettled. Uganda is a very large host community. It's hosting refugees from very many countries like Somalia, like the DRC Congo, like Rwanda, among others. Next slide. Challenges faced by refugees. So as we all know, that it's very difficult for you to, when you leave your country, you go into another country where you don't know anyone, you face very many challenges. For example, these people face a challenge of housing. Most of them, when they come into the country, some of them they go into refugee camps. So they are given tents. So housing is a difficulty. Another difficulty is employment. First of all, these people, they don't know the language, and also they find a problem in getting used to the area and getting employment. First of all, those countries they move into, they're already having a burden of unemployment. So adding these people, it's a bit challenging for them to find a source of living. Another problem is language barrier and communication. These people come from their different countries with their different mother tongues and national languages. So they face very many difficulties in communication. Another problem is community attitude. You find that some people in these host communities, they don't like these refugees, maybe due to their different, maybe religions. Some of them, they don't like Somalis. Some of them have their different reasons, that they are dirty, they are violent. Another problem they face is education. You find that these people come from their different countries. Like maybe if you're a refugee from Congo, you find that in Congo they speak French. So when you reach here in Uganda, you are forced to learn English, and then you have to, if for example you were in senior 6, you cannot be put in senior 6. You have to go maybe to senior 2, so that you may learn the language and catch up. So education is a problem, and also getting the money to educate these children. Most refugees, they are struggling to feed themselves. They are struggling to find a source of living. So most of them are unable to send their children to school. So very many refugees are uneducated. Like if you see, for example, in Uganda, very many Somalis kids, most of them stay at home, and also due to the problem of the language barriers, very many refugees fail to adapt in their host communities. Like you find someone has been a refugee in a country for like 2 years, but that person cannot even speak the language they are speaking in that country. So you find them, really, most of them fail to get educated and they stay home. Another problem is trauma. You know, when people manage these things differently, you find these people have gone through a lot of experiences, bad experiences of war, killing. Some of them have seen their parents being killed. Some of them have seen their wives being raped. So these people face different traumas, and they some manage them well and some fail to manage them. So another problem is visa insecurity. Very many refugees, when they move into a place, they don't get the countries. They don't get an identification. So it puts them in an insecurity, because some of them fear to move at night because of fear of being arrested. And some of these refugees, when they are received in those host communities, they face challenges of receiving those visas. Some of the host communities, they don't provide visas to some people, maybe because they are old. So because they are old, because of some reason. So mostly you find that it's the youth who are given those visas. Another challenge is role change of family members. Some people face difficulty. You find that maybe you are a man, you have your family, you were providing for them in your country, but due to maybe war, you were forced to move into another country. And then when you move into another country, you become unemployed, and maybe it's now your wife who is taking care of the family, it's your wife who is providing everything. So that change of role makes some people, it gives them difficulty in adapting to that life. Another, I think that's the end of our presentation. Thank you everyone for listening. You're welcome for any questions.
Thank you very much, team. You did a great job. Let's welcome questions from colleagues. But as other people raise up their hands to ask questions, maybe I can ask you one or two as a pair. Why do you think it is only the low-income countries that are more willing to host refugees?
Okay. I'm of the view that these countries, most low-income countries, they want to host these refugees in order to get donations and support from maybe the UN, the UNHCR, from those numerous other organizations. So these low-income countries mostly want to get donations, they want to get support from those countries. And another thing is that when you have refugees in your country, very many organizations move into that country. So there are some benefits like employment, not like here in Uganda, there are very many refugee organizations, and very many Ugandans are working, hundreds of Ugandans are working in those refugee organizations. So there are also some, so hosting these people has a bit of benefits. That's what I think.
Kennedy, what do you think in addition to what Victoria said?
Yes, maybe to add on, this thing of refugees, these are global things. So the high-income countries, they know the burden of dealing with immigrants. So if instead of taking the refugees themselves, they look for places near where they originated from. Because in the long run, I think they plan to have these people go back to their countries. So they send them to the countries which are nearby. So they pay the host countries, and then the host countries harbor the refugees. So it's a win-win for both. The high-income countries pay money for the other one. The host country benefits the money, and then they all win anyway. But in the end, the host country, the high-income country saves itself from the burden, because there's a lot of bad things that come with hosting refugees. Because as we have seen in our presentation, most countries that generate the refugees are also the same countries that have refugees of themselves. We have seen like the case for DRC and Sudan. Like we have refugees who are Sudanese in Southern Sudan, then we have refugees who are Southern Sudanese, but in Sudan. So it's people keep moving to and fro. The other rich countries don't want to deal with those burdens, because we saw it's only Germany that is dealing with that. And because they are, of course, they have a very good economy and they have very good laws, they can deal with the limited movements of the refugees. That's what I think.
Okay, thank you very much, team. Questions from the group?
Yeah, good morning. I'm asking why are wars most common in low-income countries?
Victoria or Kennedy, can anyone respond?
I think wars are not common in low-income countries, but the publicized wars, are that which are common. And I find these wars are, yes, they are common because they are which are out there in the public. And most of these wars are fought not by the people in those countries, because we kind of have no choice. We are donor-run countries, I would say. So whatever the donor wants is what we shall do. In the end, we end up fighting ourselves as the low-income countries. So we kind of have no choice on that.
Not that low-income countries, they have limited resources, and most of the wars are pivoted to scramble for resources. Yes. So people are trying to struggle for whatever little thing is available, and they are really prone to war. Even you know that if you have a family that is big at home, and you have limited resources, you will fight over food, you will quarrel over sleeping space, you will quarrel over a chair, even a knife will make you quarrel and fight. So, you know, all the time their reason is to fight. Okay, are there more questions? Okay, thank
Yes,
you very much.
Excuse me.
Yes.
So I talk to people
Yes.
who don't have origin. Like I'm wondering how can that happen? People do not have, like, for example, any citizenship or any attachment to any country. So how is that possible?
Hey, it is possible. Okay, Kennedy, explain.
Yes, there is a class of people who are called stateless people. If, let's say, a way of getting, let's say, citizenship, you're either by birth, by registration, by marriage, and by whatnot. So let's say if you're Ugandan and you're born in Kenya, but you find Kenya doesn't have those laws which help you get citizenship, you become a stateless person. If you ran away from Uganda, you like denounced Uganda and stuff like that. So there are people who are, some of them have crossed borders, some have never crossed borders, but they remain stateless. The best example would be like for the Indians, the Indians in Uganda. They are not registered Ugandans, they are not a tribe in Uganda, but also in India, some of them have never even reached India. So they remain there, they're stateless. Then the so-called Palestinians, who ran away from their country, they're in Israel and whatnot. The other country doesn't want them, then the host country which they want doesn't want them. So they remain stateless. No country recognizes them as their citizens, like by law. So they stay like that.
Even locally here, you should know that there are people who can say, the parent can say, the Baganda say, kuzalukuka. You can have your parent, your mother, your father, and then it denounces you that you are no longer his or her child. So in that case, you become fatherless or motherless because those who would have been your parents disowned you. So in such situations, it can happen that a certain group of people
The recording two, and we are two. That is Immaculate and Naukera Prosi. So we are to present refugee situation in Uganda, and we also started by defining who is a refugee.
Is it possible for you to put it in a slideshow? Is it possible for you to put the presentation in slideshow?
It is. Is that okay? So we started by defining a refugee is a person or anyone who is outside their country of origin for reasons of fear, persecution, conflicts, or generalized violence or circumstances that have disturbed public order. And Stewart and the group already mentioned some of the ways of how someone can become a refugee. So we'll not dwell on that, but we shall concentrate on our topic, the refugees in Uganda. And we say that as of 30th November 2021, Uganda hosted over 1.5 million refugees and asylum seekers, mainly from South Sudan and DRC and Burundi, making Uganda the most hosting country for refugees in sub-Saharan Africa. And Uganda has received over 35,000 new arrivals fleeing war and persecution in South Sudan and DRC since January 2022. And this is in addition to the 1.5 refugees already hosted in the country, still making us the biggest refugee hosting country in Africa. And we say that over 80% of these refugees that are hosted in Uganda mainly stay in 13 districts of Uganda, and these are in the north, southwestern regions, and also the capital city in the central. And these refugees, they live in villages known as settlements, where they coexist with communities that host them. And this approach, combined with progressive refugee laws and freedoms, provide refugees in Uganda with significant prospects for dignity and self-reliance. And that is why you find that there are so many people that walk into Uganda or come into Uganda because of the friendly policies and laws that we have in place for the refugees, unlike other countries. Then more than 62% of the refugees in Uganda come from South Sudan and 28 are from DRC of the entire total. And then these refugees that are in Uganda come from 8 prominent countries in Africa that mainly include South Sudan, DRC, Burundi, Somalia, Rwanda, Eritrea, and Ethiopia. We all know what is happening in these countries, as I've mentioned. There are wars that have been there for decades. And as the first group highlighted, what are some of the reasons that may force someone to become a refugee? Civil wars are one of them. And we went on to say that one of the largest settlements that South Sudanese refugees primarily use is Bidibidi, and it also doubles as the biggest refugee settlement camp or site in Uganda. And it is roughly on 234 square meters, and people use the land for both residential and agricultural needs. What has been done? Someone is saying that my screen has not moved.
Slides are not moving.
You end your screen show and just continue without slideshow, so that they're able to move.
I hope we are at par.
Yeah, immaculate.
So what has been done to help out with the influx of so many refugees coming into the country? The government of Uganda, in partnership with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, they have continued to provide protection and humanitarian assistance to refugees in Uganda and support efforts towards a comprehensive refugee response. And then Uganda has also implemented the Comprehensive Refugee Response Framework and Global Compact on refugees, emphasizing the inclusion of refugees into national systems, particularly in the education, health, livelihood sectors. We have seen that if you happen to go to these refugee sites, you'll actually notice that these people are living a life that Ugandans are also living. You may not really distinct that this is a Ugandan or a non-Ugandan because they have all that most of us as Ugandans have. They benefit from the services that we, the nationals, have. Then the United Nations Refugee Agencies in 2002 had a budget for Uganda close to 333 million USA dollars. And this is about 50 million lower, and this is 50 million lower than its 2019 budget. So here we look at that with the coming of refugees into the country also receives some financial assistance that comes from different agencies. One of them is already mentioned, but also with other implementing partners within the consortium. And then Uganda also implements its 2006 Refugee Act. And here we importantly teased out the aspect of settlement and transit centers. And in these settlement and transit centers, what Uganda actually does is to help build skills of these persons, training, educational programs are running, but mainly or at programming level, we see that the ministry, in accordance with the constitution and any laws, they have designated particular areas within the country or land just to provide for the purposes of providing temporary accommodations to persons who have applied for grant of refugee status, pending the process and consideration of their application by the eligible committee, or they actually locate like local settlements and integration of these refugees whose applications for refugee status have been granted. They actually give them land or places where they can live in and go on even to give them temporary settlement or temporary housing. We see tents being used and those other structures that are in place. Then we also came up with a few sites. There are quite very many, but we managed to identify 11 sites that are currently in Uganda, where most of these refugees are. One is the Acholi P settlement, then the Bidibidi, which happens to host about 50% of refugees in Uganda, and with the greatest percentage being refugees, since it is at the border of Uganda and close to the border of Uganda and Sudan. So I will not go through most of them with interest of time, but those are the sites or some of the refugee camps we're able to identify as a team. Over to you, proceed.
Good morning.
Rosie, good morning, but your sound is very low.
I'm going to, actually, the causes of refugees have been discussed by the first group. So I'll not go through them, but I'll just read through. We have civil wars, there is violence, conflict in their countries, food insecurities. Actually, these things were explained better in group one. I think we can go to the next slide. When we look at the effects of refugees, I think we can have good effects and bad effects. That's what I think. So we have increase in refugee numbers. For example, here in Uganda, we look at the refugee settlements. There are big numbers of refugees. When we go to other villages, like we also have big numbers of refugees. Like when you go to that side of Buziga, you find there are very many Eritreans. You find very many sorts of people, like from different countries. And you find that the native people, actually, they are very few. So there is limited resources and little international support. Like we said, Uganda it has the highest numbers of refugees, but support is very limited. It's little. So we have security and environmental burdens. We also have refugees put pressure on public social services such as education, water, and health, which often causes conflict with host communities. We also have conflicts. Like the first group said, these refugees, they come from different countries and people have different behaviors. So some people are very violent. They come to your community, they are ever fighting, all those sorts of things. We have increased channels of pharmacy in areas with more refugees, e.g. private education. Me personally, I've not seen like refugees attending these government schools. Most of them, the ones I see, they go to private sector, which helps somehow to increase on their income. Next slide. Then we also have settlement challenges. We have finding affordable housing. Like here in Kampala, houses are very expensive. So remember, those people, they come without money, and so they find it hard to look for where to stay. Then finding employment, that can be due to the language. They don't understand the native, like the host language they have found. And sometimes people find it hard to employ people from other countries.
We also have language and communication barriers. There is racism and discrimination. Here in Uganda, these days we see a lot of racism, like people from different tribes, like, and I don't know how to explain that, but people in different tribes, they tend like to discriminate others from other tribes. Sometimes it's very weird. Community attitudes, that's, for example, the host communities. People may have their different ways of doing things. So you just go there and start, like you start living there. I don't know what happens. Then impact on disrupted education, on schooling. We have learning English. Those are like, they are difficult things. People find them difficult. Distance and lack of communication with families in the home country. We have ongoing mental health issues. I think this one was discussed by Victoria. Then financial difficulties, that's money issues. Then the visa insecurity. I think that's all. Thank you. That's all we had.
Maybe also to re-emphasize on the causes of refugees. We look at Uganda and also the types of refugees that we have that come from the nearby countries. You look at things like disease outbreaks, the famine, and then the violation of laws. Ebola in Congo is the commonest example as to why we are having an influx of refugees in Uganda. That's all I wanted to add.
Sorry, my network first went off, got interrupted a bit. Then I found another person talking. Has she finished presenting?
Everything is done.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can we have questions for the second pair? No questions for the second pair?
No questions.
Okay, Immaculate, again, the same question. Why is Uganda so willing to host these?
I think that presentation was quite straight and it was.
Immaculate, why is Uganda so willing to host these refugees? What do you think? What is the secret behind?
Uganda in particular indirectly benefits from these refugees. We've seen that there is some funding that we receive as a country from different agencies as they try to support the refugees. So indirectly we benefit as well. Then two, some of these refugees are a source, let me say, they can be an asset to the country. Some of them come with some skills that they're able to pass on to the natives, some technologies that we can copy from them, and then we improve either our income, basically that.
The third pair?
Thank you very much. Good morning. This is pair 3, and it has Gloria Pio and Hamida Najuko. I shared our work on the WhatsApp group. Someone please help me share it. We as the person is helping us share, I can begin with the introduction maybe. So we are doing the management of political and social issues in refugee communities. Defining a refugee community, it's a country of asylum and the local, regional, and national governmental, social, and economic structures within which refugees live. Oh, yeah, it's here. Within which the refugees live. And examples of such grouped already, talked about them, the Bidibidi, Nachivale settlement, Changwali, Acholi P, and many others. So we can go to the next slide. So we realized that this kind of management basically revolves around the rights, human rights, and the laws that are attached to them as regards the political bit. So the first thing we're going to look at is the refugee conversion. This one basically lets us know that refugees have a duty to respect the laws and measures taken for maintenance of public order in a country that they seek refuge. And it's also the duty of the country where the refugees seek refuge to restrict these political things. We see here that where this is necessary to protect vital interests of the state, the extent to which such activities, that is the political activities, can lawfully be restricted will principally be determined by the limits of the relevant human rights laws, which we are going to see below. Next slide. So here we have something to note: that refugees are to be afforded the same political rights as other aliens in the country of asylum. And furthermore, the rights covered by that article are subjected to Article 3, which therefore prohibits any discrimination between refugees in the enjoyment of the political rights solely on the bias of race, religion, and country of origin. That means that these refugees also have the same rights like we do, restrictions that we're going to see. So human rights laws. In general, human rights, please take me back a bit. Yes. In general, human rights laws does not distinguish between aliens and citizens. The notable exception is with regard to the right of participation in an electoral process. Next. So the only difference will come in the electoral process. So what is the right to vote and to stand for elections, elections in the country of asylum? So when we have, for example, refugees from, let me say, Southern Sudan, and they come to Uganda, the political law does not allow those refugees to vote for anyone or to participate in such activities of voting in Uganda. Recently, we had elections for our presidents, but the refugees did not take part because they are prohibited. But it is different for a refugee that is in the country and they come from, for example, Southern Sudan. They have a right to go back to their country and vote. The only difference is that there are some restrictions attached to that. For example, the restriction of age. We are not going to have children that are refugees from Southern Sudan going back to their country to vote, but only those that are eligible when it comes to age. So that is the only difference when it comes to voting that we see among the refugees and the citizens. Next. Yes, and then here we also have freedom of expression. So this is the external manifestation of the right of freedom of thought or conscience, and is central to the ability of individuals to carry out any meaningful political activity. The guarantee of freedom of expression in those articles in coverage of aliens, including refugees, fall within the scope. However, this right is not without limitations. Everything we are going to see here has limitations. So the refugees have a right to express themselves when it comes to these political things. However, they have limitations. And then it states that freedom of expression may be subject to restrictions necessary for respect of the rights and reputation of others, or for protection of national security, public order, health, etc. Next. Freedom of assembly. Refugees have a freedom to carry out assemblies. So the coming together of individuals is often an important prerequisite for a political activity. For example, if maybe they want to carry out a political activity, you will not just wake up one morning and do it, but you'll first assemble yourselves maybe for discussions and other things. So refugees have that freedom. However, it's subjected to restrictions that are necessary in the interest of national security or public safety, as we saw in the other parts. Next to what? Freedom of association. The guarantee of freedom of association in that article applies equally to aliens and citizens. That means it is the same for people that are originally from that country and the refugees that come in. So this, in principle, accords refugees the right to form political organizations. However, the formation or operation of such organizations may be restricted on the same grounds as that article. Thus, it is lawful to ban a refugee organization that incites hatred against a particular political party. For example, if we have maybe refugees from DRC, they come to Uganda, and for example, they won't be allowed for them to form an organization, a political organization that is against the NRM government. They speak bad about it, or they're planning bad things. They are allowed to do the associations, but they cannot have those organizations that are not proper. Next. Freedom of movement. So the refugees are allowed to move. Freedom of movement is guaranteed for all those lawfully within a state of article that, subject to restriction necessary to protect security, national security, public order, just like we saw in the others, and which are consistent with the other rights guaranteed by the ICC. So the right would therefore also apply to all refugees lawfully within the state. So it doesn't mean that when you're a refugee in Uganda or any other state, you're not allowed to move. We have seen them cross, for example, from Gulu to Kampala to Jinja without any interruptions, as long as you have the legal documents. Next. Next. A right to privacy. This is, I think, self-explanatory. These people have a right to privacy. For example, we have those refugees who come and they maybe they were very important people in the political ground thing to everyone. They have a right to be interrupted if, for example, we have someone like Joseph Kony. We all know he's a rebel. He cannot privately come and sit, stay in Uganda, and because of right of privacy, no one has to, talk about anything. We shall only encourage his privacy or anyone's privacy that is a suspect, and we know that they can cause danger to our country or the society they are in. Next. Stuart. Next. Yes, I think this is my last slide. Peaceful enjoyment of possessions. We know that refugees, once they are coming to our country, I'm going to, of course, talk about Uganda. Some of them have their things, cars, they have a lot of stuff. It's okay for them to have the possessions. Some of them can even acquire maybe property in here, houses, shops. It's okay. However, there is a restriction attached to it as well. We shall not be comfortable as a country to have refugees coming in with guns. We know that that will hinder the safety of the community they are staying in. So they're allowed to have the possessions, but there is a restriction attached to it. Thank you, Hamida. You take the next.
Thank you, Gloria. This is Hamida. I'm taking the social rights of refugees while in Uganda. Refugees are issued with an identity card in a prescribed form stating the refugee status of the holder for purposes of identification and protection. They are also permitted to remain in Uganda. They are entitled to fair and just treatment without discrimination on grounds of race, religion, sex, nationality, ethnic identity, membership of a particular social group, or political opinion. Next slide. The right to transfer assets held and declared by a refugee at the time of entry into Uganda, including those lawfully acquired in Uganda. Refugees are also entitled to education other than elementary education, for which refugees must receive the same treatment as nationals, and in particular regarding access to particular studies, the recognition of foreign certificates, diplomas, and degrees in the remission of fees and charges. Refugees has a right to engage in agriculture, industry, handcraft, and commerce, and establish commercial and industrial companies in accordance with applicable laws and regulations in force in Uganda. Next slide. Refugees also have a right to practice the profession of the refugee who holds qualifications and who wishes to practice that profession. The right to have access to employment opportunities and again in employment. Any other right that may legally be accorded to a refugee. They have the same rights as the nationals of Uganda with respect to practicing their religion and the religious education of their children. They also have a right of association as regards non-political and non-profit making associations and trade opinion. Next slide. Have free access to courts of law, including legal assistance.
Yes, you muted the baby and muted yourself. I can't hear you.
Maybe I can continue as she sorts herself.
Please continue.
So the second, what we're seeing here is a refugee shall be accorded the same protection as is accorded to the nationals of Uganda in respect of the protection of intellectual property rights, including industrial interventions, patents, designs, trade names, copyrights, and other artistic and scientific works. So that means that a refugee can also come and start a business, something like that in Uganda, and they have to be treated the same way like a citizen of Uganda is treated when they want to do the same. And then we have freedom of movement. This one, I think I explained it prior to this discussion. Next slide. Then we have a right. They have a right to travel document. Here we see that a recognized refugee, those of Alonda talked about it, a recognized refugee staying in Uganda is entitled to a travel document for the purpose of travel outside Uganda, unless compelling reasons of national security or public order require otherwise. So it doesn't mean that once you're a refugee, for example, in Uganda here, you're not allowed to go to any other country. Just like I said, the rules are almost the same for all of us. They can come as long as they have the required documents, they can always go to other countries if they wish. Next. We're almost getting done, don't worry. Next slide. Yes, just to add more, a travel document issued to a recognized refugee shall be valid for all countries except the refugee's country of origin and those countries with respect to which Uganda has restrictions. So you can only go to countries that is not your country where you came from, or to countries where Ugandans are not supposed to go, but you can travel really. And then a recognized refugee in possession of a valid passport by the country of origin shall surrender that passport to the issuing officer before acquiring a travel document. Then lastly, a person who has ceased to be a recognized refugee under this act shall not be issued a travel document. And if such a person is in possession of a travel document, he or she shall surrender it to the immigration office. This is self-explanatory. Next slide, and I think it's the thank you one. Thank you guys for listening. Please ask me.
Thank you very much, team. Questions for the team?
Sharing. Slowly.
I think they've done a great job. If there are no more questions, can we have a next pair? Can we have the next pair? Cultural issues.
Okay, good morning, class. This is Nachuku Edori. I request you to help us share because I have already posted the work on our WhatsApp group. Okay, Mariam, thank you. I request you move to the first slide. Okay, thank you. Our question is management of cultural issues in refugee communities, and our study objectives. Number one is to outline the cultural issues in refugee communities, and the second is to explain the various ways of managing cultural issues in refugee communities. Next slide. In this picture, okay, we start from, okay, the other picture we are having represents, it has a symbol saying refugees for prosperity, self-reliance and dignity. And it's the reason why we are looking at the cultural issues in the refugee communities, because much as they are refugees, they must live with dignity, that and respecting their culture is part of it. Next slide. We are looking at culture, and we define culture as an umbrella term which encompasses the social behavior, institutions, and norms found in human society, as well as the knowledge, beliefs, arts, law, customs, capabilities, and habits of the individuals in these groups. And regions or location. Next explains culture. As I've already said, that culture is an umbrella. And this umbrella culture, yeah, whoever is not seeing that's logging again, because I'm not the one sharing, but I'm seeing the shared work, meaning it's a personal problem, not a general. So culture is an umbrella, and back to yeah, and it has all those things we are seeing. It consists of the attitudes, how people see things, the beliefs, the language, the customs, rituals, behavior, faith or religion, the food people eat, art, music, and drama. All that is under culture. When we talk about culture, we mean all those things. Next slide. Next, yeah, thank you. Then we are looking at the examples of the cultural identifiers. We look at the gender identity and role in different culture. Culture identifiers, we have gender identity and roles, sexual orientation, education, age or spiritual practices, race, ethnicity, nationality and locality, socio-economic status, social class, and social class. Then you have perceptions on mental health, etc. Those are some of the cultural identifiers. Then we looked at the cultural considerations for health professionals. One is the language barriers. So when refugees when you go to a refugee community, most times you're going to be we will face language barrier as an issue, because these people are from a different country that are speaking a different language, and they are now in a host community which also has its own language, and even the health workers there, they are so much used to the local language. So we expect language barrier as one of the health issue, the culture consideration for health professionals. Then unfamiliarity with the concept of palliative care and hospice settings. They struck to healthcare service and clinicians. They are going to be overwhelmed by the increased number of the refugees, and some refugees come in even with new medical conditions that were not even existing in the host community they've come in. Then we have personal experience and past trauma. When refugees come, these people they're already traumatized. So most of them are having post-traumatic stress disorder. So you can do something and they interpret it in the wrong way because of the past trauma. Then you have religious differences. Different people, different culture worship differently and worship different God. Then you have belief in alternative medicines. Another issue. Then we have the common cultural issues in refugee communities, which include finding affordable housing. As the previous presenters was presenting, she talked about refugees having their rights. A refugee, sometimes they are settled into the community and they are brought outside the camps they usually face this issue of finding an affordable housing. Then finding employment, reason being when people in due to the different cultural background, you find that people have engaged in different economic activities. Like someone can be a farmer, then the refugee camp where this person has gone, where the person is settled, the land there is not fertile, so they find it hard to find employment. Then language and communication barrier. We have racism and discrimination. We have phobia.
And exophobia is discriminating people over different, like disliking people because they are from a different tribe or they are from a different community. Then we have birth of new social cultural systems. Just as we all knew, Swahili was born in East Africa because of the intermarriages between the people they found on the coast and the Arabs who had come to the coast. So it also happens in refugee centers. New culture can be born. Then we have transport issues. We have cultural differences because people are going to be mixing with other people, meaning the people with different culture, since everyone is coming from a different community. We have prejudice, which is unreasonable dislike of a particular group of people or things. We have access to medical services. When refugees come to our community, there is the medical facilities are overburdened. So also access to medical services is another e-culture issue. Then you have community.
Is it only me having the connectivity problem because she seems to be breaking? Is everyone struggling to hear or only me?
She's a bit loud, sir.
Only
Okay. Then we have impact of disputed education on schooling. Was different in different culture, people studied differently. Thank you very much. My colleague is coming in to continue from where I've stopped.
Thank you so much, Doreen, for your presentation. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to take you through managing conflicting cultural practices in these refugees committees. Together with my colleague, we looked at the following. Resettled refugees when they reach in the country, they are encouraged to retain their culture. And most times where there are different cultural practices between the resettled refugees and the community that are hosting them, get little concerned. And of course, in this time, there are always conflicts. E.g., we look at female genital mutilation and then the corporal punishments at times. Then, however, conflicts of this nature are managed also depend both on the issue concerned and on the receiving country. So cultural practices were managed by integration, and this is a two-way process, with the resettled refugees adjusting to the ways of their new country, and then the receiving societies learning about and adjusting to the practices of refugee committees. These cultural practices also managed in a consistence with the notion most receiving society manage conflicts with a continuum of strategies and encompassing them. And in that way, educating the wider community to increase acceptance and value was also another way of managing these cultural practices, where communities were brought together and they learned values from different cultures and beliefs and practices of the newcomers through educating them. And as we see in a refugee setting, most especially the one in Yumbe, we saw schools being established. And in these schools, they teach them cultures of different communities. Then the other way of managing cultural practices were through mediation and bridge building between the refugees and wider communities. In bridge building, they are brought together like in dialogues where they share their experiences, and the other community like the host also learn from them. Then creating awareness, raising an education in these refugee committees by different partners that have come to address their issues. You know, most refugees, when they come to the country, like other colleagues have discussed, they face a lot of challenges, most especially language barrier. So in creating awareness, there's an education, there's at least a language that they are taught when they come to these communities. And they also get to learn the language within, because to interact with the host community, they need at least one language that the two parties can understand. Then a typical group briefing. They are always gathered in one place in the process of registration and offering them cards. So during that period of time, they are briefed on domestic violence, parenting issues, and roles of policies and laws in the country where they are going to be hosted. And in other words, there's also a holistic approach that improves integration and easing tension surrounding social cohesions. So by this, use of space dialogues were carried out, then community mediation and awareness raising sessions and peer support and young community leader programs are also designed to engage these refugees when they get to a new community to address the cultural practices in the new community. Then the cultural issues was also managed through engaging the wider community, where in many countries, community-based groups and institutions have played an important This was done by developing awareness-raising activities, as we've discussed earlier on, and strategies to combat racism and xenophobia among the wider community. Then in that, during the engagement, fostering the participation of refugees, where they are encouraged to participate in these local institutions and organizations, such as schools that have been created for them, clubs, associations, and places of work. It's their own culture in the same way. Through this, we saw that ensuring that resettled refugees are presented in administrative and decision-making positions. We see most IPs, the UNHCR, the IRC, get to these resettlement camps and then ensure that they are resettled. Even the country itself, by allocating them land so that they are closed in one environment without mixing with the community or the host community. Then in engaging the wider community, volunteer opportunities for the resettled refugees in these local communities were also encouraged. Then, of course, taking measures to ensure that local institutions and organizations are responsive to resettle refugees. Yes, Uganda as a country hosting most of these refugees, it's their role and the government role to make sure that they are responsible to see that these refugees they are being hosted. Then, of course, supporting cultural events such as festive seasons and special days, the World Refugees Days, where they are recognized so that they feel that at least where they're being hosted, they also respect them and value their culture. Then support for the development of volunteer programs in the community and community sponsorship programs. Yes, we see that most of them are given the privilege to also engage and participate in some of these programs to feel that they are really owned and welcomed in the community. These cultural practices were also managed by ensuring opportunities for refugees addressed. So they are given freedom to air out their issues. And of course, through these sessions, the government and the IPs around get to address their issues, and also involving them to participate in some of these activities within their communities, and also making them own some of these opportunities that are awarded to them. Then, of course, ensuring that resettled refugees are able to access the resources around. They are also required they should have access to health services, the schools, the communities and institutions of the receiving or the host community. So by managing these cultural practices, they are asked sorry about that, they're asked to access some of these resources really without charges on them. Then fostering a climate of understanding and acceptance of people from refugee backgrounds. Yes, of course, you remember that when you look at the common cultural issues, climate is one of them, because they're coming to a new place and it's a different environment altogether, and there are factors that encompasses them in this new environment. So they are made to understand the climate of their host community, and also they are accepted. Brought together and bridging the differences in these host communities through education, and then the dialogue things, the climate issues are fostered so that they can adhere and adopt to the new environment. Then enhancing possibilities for meaningful connections with individuals and institutions in the receiving society is also one of the ways where cultural issues were managed. Then participation of resettled refugees in community decision-making groups. Yes, when they get to these new communities, they are involved in the participation and also the decision-making in their different groups and structures in the refugee camps. Then soliciting the support of community leaders in communities and receiving refugees, including existing majority and indigenous community. Yes, they are also supported. Like I saw by World Food supporting them, providing them food. This is also another way of handling their culture and addressing issues of the refugees when they get to a country of host. Yes, experts in different ministries were identified to guide this, and this is how some of these issues were managed. Then developing communication materials that are targeted to specific audience and co-produce with refugees to demystify and explain and promote resettlement. Yes, IEC materials were developed regarding where different food which are consumed in Uganda, different types of and different directives are put in writing to guide them deep. Because at times, you know, with the language barrier, when somebody sees the picture, it communicates very clearly to this type of communities with language barrier in the host community. Then engagement of non-traditional actors at the national and local level, particularly the private sectors, the community-based organizations who came in to support these refugees in the countries where they are hosted. Then developing quality preparedness programs for refugees and receiving communities that are co-designed and implemented in collaboration with local authorities, as we've seen from where these refugees are kept and hosted. A number of quality preparedness programs are designed to support and to keep the refugees safe. We also see that in managing these cultural issues, promoting the direct and cultural identity is also one of the management that made the refugees felt that where they're hosted, at least they value their culture as a way that they were accepted to also practice their culture in the new place of host. Then promoting freedom from extortion. Refugees hosting community to achieve their social cohesion. I think with that, we bid to end here. If there is any question, you can ask. If there is more additions, yes, it is welcome. Thank you for listening.
Presentation. Questions from the members? Any questions on how to manage cultural issues in the refugee community? Okay, members seem to be comfortable. We can now move to the next pair. Can we have the next pair?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
This is Ruth Mango, pair 5 or group 5. I'm with Siki Rasul.
Lucy, you went with the key.
I'm restarting my computer, but I've shared the work with the group, the class group. Anyone who is able can help me share. It has just got a challenge.
Okay. Is anyone in position to share the slides?
Because if I share with my phone, the font will be too small according to the design we had used when I try to share with the phone.
Stuart, are you able to share the slides? Or Derek or anyone?
You can continue. Let me go to WhatsApp and download it.
I hadn't downloaded the work.
Ruth, you can begin, I think, as they download, and I also say you can continue.
Okay, our question was the relationship between refugees and host community. With the introduction, by defining a refugee of violence, a persecution, or any other political issue. To define a host community, it refers to any country and a local, either local, regional, or national government, social or economic structure within which refugees live. So a host community can be a part in a country where people can seek asylum for safety of their lives. So in the context of refugee camps, the host community may camp as the camp, or may simply be may simply neighbor the camp, but have an interaction with or other be impacted by the refugees residing in that camp. So we see that the host community's attitude towards refugees depends on the economic, political, security situations in which the host state. But however, the relationship considers the following factors, and these are what we are going to see in detail. So these are some of the factors that are considered in this relationship. One, we have water and sanitation. On refugees, that's just a typing error. On hosting these refugees, the host community normally goes into shortage of some useful needs. For example, on the basis of water and sanitation, water supply can be severely compromised, and this affects the quantity of water and the quality of water for the host community, making the host community women maybe fetch water from afar, because normally women are the ones that are engaged in such activities. So the water, because the population goes high, the water may get dirty because of the overpopulation and so on. So we have another point is security. Refugees are often seen as a security threat to the host community. For example, you remember when we are going to host refugees from Afghanistan, a lot of political threats were raised. So there was need to ensure that there is a political will and commitment in ensuring that these people come into the country. So that the complaints of refugees raping women and cutting down their trees, armed robbery and gambling and prostitution are managed. We have education. There has been mixed reports on impact of the refugees and local education. I got a chance and I was, when I was going to Moyo, I went through Yumbe and I was able to see the BDBD camp. So you find that these people do not go through the government education system, but rather the education system is put within the camp. So there is a lot of competition with the local, thinking that these people are really given a separate and probably a nice education system in terms of resources than others. Because, for example, the host community would want to make them feel special so that the donors can really put in much effort in terms of support and supplies. So we have health and sanitation. So in general, the influx of a great number of refugees who inflow into the country causes an increase in communicable infections, communicable infectious diseases in the surrounding area. So this again becomes a public health challenge to the host country. So in some areas, the locals are allowed to utilize the health services at the refugee camp. And at the other hand, refugees have a better health indication than the surrounding village, like how I've been explaining previously, that the host community may want to make the donors happy so that these people give out the feedback that they are getting a better service, so that the money that is coming into the country as revenue or as donor funding can be sustained. Where refugees, when they arrive in the camp, they are often in great need for maybe poles for constructions, like you saw the ones from Congo, firewood for cooking, which puts a great strain on the natural resources. So the environmental health aspect is also affected.
Ruth,
We
I think
have
I
the
go from
economic
here.
factor. Okay, please. Sorry, I was.
Yes, good morning, class. This is Asiki, Group 5 member. As earlier on, we said the relationship, this relationship comes as this people comes to the host community or to the area where they are located. You find there's interaction with all what she previously mentioned. Interaction at water point, issues with the security, and even education. However, at this point, I want to talk about the environment, where we say that as these people come, you find it there there's a great need, and the impact rests actually on the environment, in a sense that as these people come, you find they look for poles in the bush, for constructing houses, for building. So you find that in other communities they are bitter, especially when they are not benefiting from the refugees, in the sense that usually these refugees, when they come, they usually say that the distribution is to be divided because of the impact of these refugees. One was in a sense that they were saying 30% should come to the host and 70% should go to the what? To the refugees. So you find the environment is also greatly affected in a way that the grasses even they cut to build their houses. So all those have impact. The next is economy. We're aware that as refugees come, usually there's when the refugee comes, there's influence in so many ways as far as the economy is concerned. You find that the food items, their price, the demand is high, and when the demand is high, you find the prices also goes high. So this bringing also an impact to the economy, in a sense that there's high demand for food and other things. So you find the prices also change. So if this is not addressed well, you find the host community will also be in a problem, because they will be hiring for, they will sell those items they have. At the end, they will have money, but finally you may find they don't have food to eat. So that is where the area of economy is also affected. Next slide. So as previously we saw, there are benefits of these refugees to the host community. You find they contribute, as we said earlier on, in the economy when it is affected, the prices goes high and the money is also invested. So you find it contributes to the tax. It also stimulates the economy in the sense that money is generated due to those high prices. And also you find the people comes, for example, when you take the situation where I am, you find there are many things that comes all the way from like Mbale, Matoke, iris, onion, tomato. So all those brings a revenue to the country at large or to the host community around. And there's it improves the local work wages. Of course, this is when they come in the area, you find the local community. When it comes to even job recruitment, you find it is, as I said earlier, on the 30% is given to the host. So the 30% that are picked from the community in terms of even human resource, they are even employed, and also they also benefit. So it's a boost innovation. Of course, when you look at these partners, you find there are so many innovations that comes on board, and basically due to the presence of these partners in addressing some of the challenges that in the settlements, and at the end you find innovation comes into place. And the last one is often generates international trade. Of course, as we said earlier on, people come from even Sudan, they can come and buy things, especially this these refugee hosting districts which are near the border. You find people could come from Sudan or from wherever they are. They come and they buy things. Also, those ones they bring. So it promotes international or bilateral trade between these two countries that are the host and the what and the area. So finally, we have the references for more. Thank you so much for any clarification. But when you look at the host, so as I said earlier on, the relationships comes with interaction. But at the end, you find there are so many areas where this community, the host community interact the relations between these. So you find even issues, they go as far as intermarriages. You find a refugee coming to the host and the host also going to the side. So there are so many areas where these relationships can be based. So with this few, I would like to remain here. Thank you so much for listening. For any concern or comment or clarification, it's most welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim, for the elaborate discussion. Someone is asking, why are some host communities having a high cost of living like Guru? Okay, so the relationship between the refugees and the host community is very important, because if it is not managed well, then the refugees surviving in that community may be very difficult. And this usually rotates around the utilization of resources available. If you go to the different refugee camps and settlement sites, it is known that some donor agencies like the United Nations High Commission for the Refugees can bring food and supply food to the refugees, because they have no gardens, especially those who are in camps. But usually this can happen also at a time when the general place is also, the general community is also experiencing famine. So the host community may see the refugees enjoying food well for them, they have nothing to eat. Many times you find that as refugees line up to receive their food, the community members also come to line up and receive the same food. And when they are chased away, then they also feel that these people should go away with their refugees because they cannot afford for them to go hungry. Well, they are seeing foreigners enjoying. So how to manage such issues is really paramount if the refugees are to survive and also to have a cordial relationship with the host community. serving maybe 1,000 people, and then you brought in another group of 1,000 people, then the number of people utilizing that service will be a problem. Meaning a person who used to spend maybe 30 minutes to get water now has to spend an hour to receive. It causes conflict, and they should be managed, handled carefully to ensure that coexistence is harmonious. Like schools, you said, usually what happens in refugee settlement sites, they establish programs to provide elementary or basic education to enable these people survive. But for professional or real education beyond the elementary is not provided in these camps, and refugees willing to take it on need to go to the existing schools, secondary schools, tertiary institutions. It is very difficult to establish a tertiary institution, a secondary school, for instance, in a settlement site. Many of them only have nursery schools, primary schools, and some form of informal education. So when they want to take on higher education, like a secondary education, tertiary education, university education, they have to go and join the existing system. So as they come, for instance, they are coming to a secondary school where it is universal secondary education. Now the host community is concerned, who is supposed to pay fees? Is the government going to use the money, the revenue from the locals to pay fees for this refugee, or the refugee will also have to pay his or her own fees, because this is meant to be for nationals? In the mosques, in the churches, when these people go to worship together, are they comfortable? Are they sitting together, or they say refugees can sit at the back as the nationals sit in the front? So this is what these are very key, very key to ensure survival, because at the end of the day, the end point of a refugee status is either you are taken back or repatriated back to your home country, or you are integrated within the community. This relationship, how you handle the relationship between these refugees and the host community, will determine a lot how, at the end, how the process will happen. Of course, if the host community is very hostile to this group of refugees, it means they cannot integrate with them, and therefore they will have either to find another site to seek refuge or be taken back from where they came from. But always remember that in refugees, the person is not willing to go back. So in any way, if you can find an option of avoiding going back, usually that's what they prefer. So it's very important that this relationship is dealt with early enough, is handled carefully from the start, so that the community is willing to welcome them and integrate with them. Things like marriages, things like the markets where they go. Are these people, are they allowed, for instance, are the host community members allowed to interact with the refugees, marry them, or are the refugees allowed to marry from the host community? Are they allowed to buy land if they have the money? Are they allowed to, do they go to the local markets where the ordinary people, so the host community members go? Are they given opportunity to get employed within the community? All those are very important. Thank you very much, group. Unless if we have more questions for this team, can we get some questions for them if they're there?
As you welcome questions, sir, these people, instead they found even Uganda is more interactive compared to their places. So you find that these people, as you have said here, they can really buy lands somewhere and also build and even relocate. So they found here is even more peaceful compared to them. Free movements and so on. So there are many areas, as you have said, but because of time factor, we just captured some few, which would take us somewhere. Thank you so much.
Okay. Can we have the next pair if there are no questions for this group?
Maybe I had one question. So yes, in times where you find that the refugees have been around for some time, and because of the pampering and the money from the funders that come to them, they tend to live a better life than the locals. In such a case, so what happens? Shouldn't these locals also be brought up to speed? Or I'm looking at it creating stigma. Sometimes the locals thinking, okay, these guys are doing much better than us in this country of ours. What do you have to say about that?
Actually, they are not doing better. They are not doing better. Refugees, in most cases, they have lost it all. They've lost all the land they had. They've lost the property they had. They've lost the relatives they had. They've lost all the friends they've had. All they have with them is their life. That is all they have. And all this aid is to help them try and reinstate them back to livelihood. So these little things they give them, like for instance, they are giving them food. For you may think for them they are having food and for you are not having food. At least for you have a garden to dig. You even have a person you can ask for a meal. For them, they don't have that kind of person. You even have a friend you can give a call. These people do not have any of such a person. So sometimes the measurement is out of scope. And it is very common that the host community, members of the host community will have such a feeling. But it is very important that from the start, education awareness programs are arranged to make them understand what these people are going through. There is no one in life who would ever wish to be a refugee. No one would ever wish to be. But by the time one chooses to be a refugee, it is because of circumstances beyond what he or she can do. No, it is not a situation that anyone would ever wish to be. But every effort should be done to ensure that the host community is not hostile against the refugees. Because the moment the host community becomes hostile against them, either by thinking they are being pampered or being treated better than them, then it creates a worse crisis.
But maybe to supplement on this, you find, as earlier I said, that really this host community also they benefit in a sense that this 30% that they are given, you find in most cases this is for misuse, and when you evaluate at the end, they don't benefit out of this 30% they are saying. When it comes to even recruitment, when it comes to maybe support and so on, so they tend to misuse, and at the end, they don't have anything at hand. That is the major problem that I'm seeing with the area where I am, because my district is the one that hosts refugees.
But all those incentives are just put in place to try and calm the host community down so that they don't become hostile to the refugees. But the refugees are very vulnerable and they really need help. But as I told you, also handling the host community is very important, because the moment they turn against them, then the situation becomes out of hand. So all these other things, they can actually choose to build, if there is a nearby primary school or secondary school, these agencies, they can choose to expand those schools or bring more resources there, so that the host community also feels that it is benefiting from their presence, so that they do not reject them. But all in all is that refugees need a lot of help from every other person. And whenever there is a possibility, everything should be done to support them. Okay, thank you very much. Let's go to the next pair. Is the next pair there?
sir, we are ready.
Please do the presentation.
Are you about to see my screen?
Yes, I'm able to see it.
Yes, are you able to see my?
Your network is poor.
Sure. Of refugees in Uganda. It's me, Evelyn, and Namnesara. So first, we're looking at this pictorial. It's showing camps. Not many of us have had the chance to look at the setting in a camp or a refugee settlement, but this can give you like a pictorial point of view. You look at it, some camps are like that. So I'll get back to this picture later on. First, we have we first define what a refugee is. These are people that conflict, persecution, war, or natural disaster. And then in Africa, we have like the previous part of, and also
Breaking.
was like so hello,
You are breaking.
Your network is bad.
we've missed the network. Just give me a minute.
Evelyn. Evelyn. Hello. If you can hear, maybe some other person can share as you present. The network may not be enough for you to be sharing at the same time presenting. Hello, can someone hear me?
Yes, Derek, I'm hearing you.
I'm saying that kindly let some other person share as you present, because your network will not enable you to share your screen at the same time presenting. It could be favorable maybe when you're just presenting, maybe when some other person is sharing the screen. How about that?
Then it's okay. Let me stop sharing, Derek, and you share. I shared on the group. Can someone please help me share?
You continue talking.
Derek or Stuart, is someone able to?
Yeah, you continue talking. I'm downloading it. Any
Okay.
person who managed to do first can share. I'm also downloading this side.
Okay. Yeah. So as I was saying, first we're looking at habits of conflicts, from civil wars to ethnical battles. So that usually makes us susceptible to having a lot of refugees because of these instabilities. So we look at, let me get the slides.
Just a moment. Derek, can you please put in slideshow?
Which page are you on?
The previous slide, please. The previous slide, go back. Go back. Okay. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. So we see these conflicts, in addition to famine and other problems, they usually result in having refugees. And these refugees, they move across all countries in Africa. Then we look at Africa having open borders. You know, Africa, we are not having strict laws about as people usually come in, okay, not come in and out, but the system is a little bit easier than other continents. So this one makes it easier just to move in Africa than other continents. So we look under in Africa from different countries, those within Africa and those even outside Africa. Just was it last year? Or I think last year we hosted refugees from Afghanistan. So yeah, we've seen Uganda being a host for various people. So refugees in Uganda, that means they are on their own, they come in on their own, and not under any organization like UNHCR. They're not under, you know, they're on their own. They're not citizens, but they're refugees who have come in to take care of themselves. And this is usually settled in urban or I wouldn't want to call them, but yeah, refugees around, is it Old Kampala? We sit there. Then we also see a lot of people from Eritrea in places of Buziga. Next. So these are refugees, but they're self-dependent on any organization. Next slide, Derek. And then those that are not self-settled, they are settled, but they're within an organization, they're within a settlement, like people in Bidibidi, people in Chaka, those are refugees, but they are settled under an organization, like under a settlement. So overview of this and how they are distributed in the country. We have in West Niles, we have districts Jumani, Arua, Moyo, Koboka, and Yumbe, which host over 752 refugees. And then we also have the Hoima, Isinjiro, Kamwenge, Chiliandongo, and Chegegwa. Those ones also host about 500. Of course, the highest number is in the West Nile. And then we also see some in Uganda, specifically Lamu, which has the highest population of people. This information was gotten from the UNHCR 2020. So there are many self-settled refugees. We talked about those under settlement and then those that are self-settled. They live outside the refugee settlement areas, and these are usually urban refugees. they received no material support from the government or refugee assistance organization. So whatever they're in charge of their security, they're in charge of food, they're in charge of where they're going to sleep. Next slide. So the ones are okay. 2020 in 2015, we are now getting deep into the encampment. What happens? Previously, we used to have camps, like it's just a tent and people just sleep there. But these are usually now, like right now, what's happening is these are temporary, like when they offload these refugee camps, or when they are transferred to the settlement area, they first stay in like a camp. These are temporary shelters that can, easily be swift. So when people get there, like emergencies that brought refugees, quite many, they put them there. But then with time, like weeks, they get into semi-permanent settlements here. The Ugandan government, under the UNHCR, they are provided with materials to actually build something that is permanent, not really permanent, but semi-permanent, far better than the previous camps that they used to go in. So the UNHCR introduced a new policy, which is extending the principal objective of the urban refugee policy to all operational contexts. So with these, the alternative to camps, they give better security. They are a little bit more permanent, the people a little bit of self-reliance. So the Ugandan government pursued that non-camp policy to create local refugees. You realize some of these refugees come and stay there for years and years before they actually go back to their countries. Some don't even go back for 10 years or more. So the other camps was a little bit inconvenient when it rains, considering our climate. When it rains, and then also they can easily be attacked. Anyone can come in and do whatever they want to do to them. That policy of no. So at this policy, refugees are allocated relatively large plots of land, 100 by 100 feet, which is approximately 30.5 by 30.5 meters of land farm. They produce their own food, and then if they have made more, they can sell more they have made. And the size of this plot also depends on the number of refugees in the. For example, now if we get from 1,000 refugees, so they give you that plot of land, and then they're supposed to partition it to make sure that all those 100 can get a small land to start their lives out there. Next slide, please. So the government, like my previous presenter, they've been saying, the government also provides the following. Realize that they give them food, UNHCR, they give them materials that they're going to use to build basic homes. This basic home is better than the camp they used to be in. So it's usually made out of logs, like they put logs and then they put, is it tarpaulin? I don't know if that is the right word saying it. Normal roots, if we can call it in a local language, but it's . as under there is food aid. That is before, of course, people have settled in and have started growing their own food. Also, I hope we see partners like Medical Team International in the case of Chaka, then the North West Nile. Yeah, those also provide healthcare to these people. Then we also see World Food Program coming in to give food. Then we have a primary school and a secondary school, then the settlement location. Next slide. So this alternative, like for encampment and integration, there are factors that must be in place, like the social cultural changes, the social cultural change refugees undergo, like Sir just mentioned, they are not in a good place. No one wants to be a refugee. So the social cultural change refugees undergo, it permits them to maintain an identity of their own and to adjust psychologically to the new situation. These people come in when they have lost their lives, they have lost their families, they have lost their land. So when they are integrated in the community, when they are to be integrated in the community, they should be able to maintain who they really are. Then the friction between the host population and the refugee is not worse than within the host population itself. So of course we have some host communities having different disputes. They actually think these refugees are doing much better. But like they said, they keep letting know of the host community, what these people are actually really going through. Then the refugees, we make sure that the refugees do not encounter more discrimination that exists between those that previously settled within the host society. So I think one slide. Just before we go to Namlesa, I just wanted to explain. So this is a picture showing right now what the new camps, how the new camps look like. Gets like material. This material is to build houses, okay, not houses, but basic homes for themselves, because we're looking at people staying for 5 to 10 years. So you don't expect them to just keep sleeping in camps, keep sleeping in camps. So this is Bidibidi. Bidibidi is actually the largest in Uganda, and I think the 3rd in the world. So yeah, this is how it looks like in Bidibidi. They are not camps anymore. Now they are more modern camps, I should call them. Namlesa, I hope you're on to take us to the next slide. Namlesa, Sarah, can I continue?
Okay, thank you so much, Evelyn, for that wonderful discussion. Good afternoon, class. This is Namlesa Sarah, taking us through the last slides. Yeah. The request move the next slide, please. Yes, Evelyn, I'm on. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hello.
Sarah, we can hear you. Proceed.
Please, class, can you hear me? My network is somewhere. Hello? I don't know whether I'm clear.
Your network is a little bit shaky, but we can hear you.
If the
we can hear you. Kindly go on.
Which slide is she referring
Okay,
to?
thank you so much. Yeah, thanks, Evie, for that wonderful share. Yeah, thanks, Derek, for sharing the screen. So let's look at the, I think Derek skipped some. Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, let's look at the merits of the settlements. Yeah, my network is poor, forgive me. Okay. Yeah, the first merit is it's okay, let me go on. Yeah, the first merit is a lack of physical danger. Like these Jews, when they are settled in these settlements, they are not worried of getting hurt as they are well protected and taken. Okay. All right then. Fine. So one of relaxing refugee policy regime and local integration, and this can be considered a durable solution which combines dimensions, and these dimensions are: the first one is the legal process, which refugees are taken away the range of rights in the host community. And here they'll have a right to social services within that host country or community, being able to access the social services of that community, like the other citizens as well. Services like education and so on. Then another one is it is an economic process to establish sustainable livelihoods and a standard of living compared to the host community. I think that is self-explanatory. The third one, it is a social and cultural process of adaptation and acceptance that enables refugees to contribute to social life and live without fear or discrimination. And acceptance that they are given in this new environment helps them to have a sense of belonging, which helps them like to move on in life.
Sorry, your network
Then thirdly, I think that's what. Then these settlements have restrictions. We see that they are better than camps because they give the refugees a sense of security and stabilizing. Derek, let's move on to the other side, please.
Sarah, let me help you with that. Your network is really poor. We can't.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay, it's okay.
So when we're looking at the merits of this settlement, like we've been mentioning, there is no physical danger to this new the alternative to camps. Then the freedom to return, also this one is a general thing. There is freedom to return to the home country at will. Then there is also access to sustainable livelihoods. For example, like we mentioned, they're given land. So this land usually helps them to live close to normal lives. They are able to grow crops. They are able to start their lives afresh. So being access to other services like education, health. So yeah, that comes from provide a little bit of sustainable livelihoods. So social inclusion, for example, of course, we know these guys are able to move, they have freedom to move. Though, of course, I think there are some restrictions, those that are in settlement, but then they can still engage with the locals. We find a little bit of intermarriage, social interaction. Then we also have the comparable standards of living. They're a little bit more like those of the host community. So when you're comparing the lives of the host community and these people in the settlement, they're a little bit comparable. They have access to almost everything that the host community has access to. And then these alternatives to camps, the new camps, is giving a little bit of more self-reliance. So those days, people are just brought everything, they just wake up and they just go for food and that's it. But with the new model, people are able to live their lives normally. They go in the morning in other social activities as those of the whole community. Next slide. So of course, like any good thing, it also has some bugs. So land, like chunks of land to these people, that brings about land scarcity because our population itself is growing. So if it's growing, land scarcity, and then that can usually trigger disputes over land. Like also fighting over resources like firewood, water, because they also are allowed to go get the same resources or share the same resource. This is in as much as they're allowed to grow their own food. There is some little bit of restriction towards their movement. So, and of course, it's not like market for their agricultural product is ready. Sometimes they move like some distance to be able to get the market for their goods. So the restrictions and then the movement, when the movement makes the agricultural product, of course, not as profitable as they should be. Then we also look at, what happens is when the refugees come and take some bit of land, it's not actually some bit, they take land. The land becomes very expensive. Look at people coming from outside the country to come and, purchase land for mining or for their own business. So that's a lot of competition on just that one resource, which makes it a little bit expensive, even for we, the host community. So that usually causes people to move, like people are moving from where they are with the host community just to go elsewhere to look maybe for grazing or for growing our crops, yet actually a host community. Yeah, mentioned a little bit earlier, it remains a great obstacle for refugees to actually settle in. For example, now Uganda, we have 56 active blank, there even more. Of course, someone who is settling in, they don't know any tribe, or they're probably not educated, or even if they are, not everyone in Uganda or the host community is educated to be able to understand the English that are speaking. So this effect on the refugee settlers. Next slide, I think it's a picture. Yes. This is also Bidi Bidi. Derek, I think you like this name. So there is a difference between these and then the others. So you find a mixture of these types of camps, and then the other grass thatched ones. So, but these are also like really active. We see them also in, I think, no, not Chaka. I've forgotten the place, but yeah. That's all we had for you. Questions, can also have answers. It
Are there any questions from the group? But as we wait for those questions, we need to understand that there is a difference between a camp and settlement. Within the camp, and they have very limited space. In a settlement, you let the refugees try to live as close as possible to the usual life, a person would have lived when he's in his or her own country, own home. Then, so usually camps, the ones we have in Uganda are transit centers, that when these refugees come in, they can be received at some point and then temporarily be stored or kept at some point, awaiting to be moved or allocated to the real settlement sites. Okay, are there questions from the members before we move to the next group?
Excuse me.
Yes.
This is Mohammed. I just have a concern about, actually I was also going to ask the difference between a camp and a settlement. Then after you answering that question, I'm just having a concern of if we are having refugees, migrants and then refugees, because at the beginning you elaborated and you told us a refugee is somebody even who doesn't think of going back, or who has had an idea of staying where he is at that moment. And I'm just curious to know that, yes, fine, in most cases, the host country does get, most especially donors and then funding from outside. But since these people, if they are going to be in a country like for more than 10 years, I'm wondering why up to right now, actually, even I think it is worldwide, we normally have the camps as they are, like they are in a really sorry state. And for me, I do think that in most cases, we normally get diseases from just even the type of the settlement people are in. Probably maybe from the sanitation, the housing, aeration, and all that. So I'm just wondering, why isn't it like most governments, why can't they really construct better housing and then also the environment where these camps are in, and they do improve them, since it is going to be of long term? What are some of the challenges which do hinder such development?
Thank you, Moha, for it as best as I can, and then maybe second. So being in a settlement, like they said, when these people are just coming in, they're put in a camp. At the beginning, I mentioned they just come, put them in their camp, and then later they're given material to construct their own houses. So this is just basic. They give you small things that can actually make you build your own basic home the way you want it. Of course, it's usually a house, but the same way, not everyone in Uganda has a good house or its condition, but we work with what we have. Or I think that's what they do. They work with what they have to make sure that people have that, like, sustainable. These people stay for years, 10 years, 5 years. It's the responsibility of the people in the settlements to actually make their lives like better, to improve diseases like spread of diseases. I don't think it's the settlement. I don't think it's anyone's responsibility to come and, clean where you stay or cook for you food. So I believe people in the settlement themselves are supposed to work towards improving their own lives as well. And that starts with maybe cleaning up, cooking good food, because they're trying to give them as like comparable settlement as possible, but they can only do so much. The rest could be our it.
Okay, can we have the next pair? Who is presenting?
Sharon. Hello?
Who is presenting?
Hello, Sharon. Are you around? You can start from there, Sharon.
I think she's speaking. Maybe she has a challenge with the mic. She might be speaking. You can text the chat with if you're speaking and we're just not hearing it. Seeing she's even moving the cursor. Could be a problem with her mic. Since she's speaking. Yeah, she's saying here she's speaking. Problem with her mic. Maybe Abraham, you can be starting as she works on the mic. So Sharon, what you're going to do is you're going to go to the settings and then you test your mic again and see, it could be maybe just altering the settings, then it will be speaking. Meanwhile, maybe Abraham could be taking us as you're working on that. Just press this commute button, then it has options, test the microphone and all those options. So you choose one like test speaker and microphone, then it will give you those options. You try it different times. It will show you where you hear that carrying bell ringing. That means your mic is now okay. Over to you, Abraham. Thank you.
So should I continue?
Yes,
As we are
please.
waiting for Sharon?
Yes, go ahead. She will come in later when she has worked on her mic. You can start.
Okay. So our group was me and Sharon. So we were given
Hello,
the question.
Yes, you're now audible.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Like I was saying, our group is going to present integration of refugees. And integration of refugees was defined as a dynamic two-way process that places demands on both the refugees and the receiving community. By dynamic two-way process, it means like there is going to be a change on the refugee side and also on the receiving community, which is the host community. And then integrating these refugees goes beyond ensuring that they are provided with basic needs and access to service. Like it's more than that. It's not only that the only thing that they're going to benefit from the host community is that basic needs and also access to service, but also it requires states and civil society creating a welcoming environment, which also supports refugees to achieve long-term economic stability, like the previous presenters have been saying, and then adjusting to the new society. And in this way, it will include fostering a sense of belonging and encouraging participation in the new community
in the new communities, like as you're coming into the host community or as you're coming in a new community, you're supposed to adopt to their way of living, you're supposed to adopt in the economic activities that are taking place, and then the state or the civil society is also supposed to create for you a welcoming community environment that is going to help you settle in amicably. There are vigorous programming that will enable these refugees and their families to enjoy equality of rights and opportunities in the social, economic, and cultural life of the country. Like as they come in, they have to have equal rights, like rights to health, rights to housing, like rights to everything, like as the host community is having. Following the integration, I will see that there is a rationale by the UNHCR about how to integrate these refugees in the host community, and there are a number of ways in this rationale. And the first one is like the situation of being a refugee is not permanent. Like as I'm becoming a refugee, the following day I might go back to my home. As we've seen, there are a number of factors as to why people become refugees, and so we wouldn't look at refugees as them being permanent refugees or being refugees forever, as if it's war, like we assume that at a certain point in time this war is going to end and these people go back to their. Yes.
Sharon, Paul is saying that you should go slow. Maybe you're going at high speed. He's not picking you well.
Oh, wow. Like as I was saying, being a refugee is not a permanent situation. Like we see, there are a number of reasons as to why somebody becomes a refugee, and time will come and whatever made you a refugee will come to an end. For instance, if there is war in your country and it's the reason as why you're a refugee, time will come and this war will end and you have to go back to your country. So in practice, the refugee will either return voluntarily to his home or her home country when the conditions that forced them into exile are reversed, like I've said. Like when war ends in your country, if it was the reason as why you became a refugee, you voluntarily choose whether to go back to your country or not. And then following still the same rationale by UNHCR in the 1951 convention, they realized that there was a convention like in 1951 that was held in Geneva on the 25th of July. And the reason of this convention was to treat refugees without prejudice. And they were trying to come up with ways in which these refugees will get equal rights, will be treated equally, like the nationals or like the host community. And about 66 countries were in attendance in this convention. And in this convention realized that a lot was talked about, and among the things that were talked about in this convention were like enumerating social and economic rights designed to assist integration, and this was in the Article 34 on the states to facilitate the assimilation and utilization of refugees. And by assimilation, we mean like these refugees, like they will still take over their culture. Like it's not like they will stop behaving the way they stop behaving. Thank you. And then by utilization of refugees, we mean that this means that a refugee will have a right, like if they want to become a nation of that country that has hosted them, they will be able to, like they will fill in necessary documents and then they become a nation of the host community. And then still in this convention, the framework is that graduate refugees should be able to enjoy a wider range of rights as their association and ties with the host state like growing stronger. In this sense, the convention gave the refugees a solid basis on which they can progressively restore the social and economic independence needed to get on with their lives. Like I've explained earlier, like if, like let me say, wherever you came from, maybe you are a business person, you're allowed to do business as long as you have capital in the host community. If you're a farmer, you're allowed to farm, like we've seen the previous pictures when we were seeing the BDBD settlement, like there is enough land for these people, for those ones that can keep, for those ones that can farm, they are allowed to farm because they have enough land to take over farming. And then continue. The UNHCR still advocated for beneficiaries of the subsidiary protection to be accorded the same level of integration facilities as persons recognized as refugees. Like the very person that discussed had terms that they defined, and we see like though we have different people that come to our country, some people are not really refugees. We have those people that need international protection from their country, like they are running away from their country, like as individuals, and they need international protection from a different country. So like the UNHCR was advocating for the same beneficiaries, like the refugee receives, still this person also receives the same. And then still, the integration of refugees is still a dynamic and multifaceted two-way process, which requires efforts by all parties concerned. By all parties concerned here, they mean the refugees and then the host community. Like it's not like we are going to just receive you. So as we are receiving you, like show us that you're able to take over whatever we have in our community. Don't come and dictate whatever you had in your community and bring it to us. So make sure you're going to be able to adopt our culture and then also work with us amicably. Then virtually, the countries have a sizable refugee population, so like to remain in their midst. Like later on, a good number of them are doing well economically in their new societies and may have become citizens, but far too many others have not been integrated. Like as time goes on, and then some people are going back to their countries, others are remaining. You see that there's going to be population growth in the host country, in the host community. So the economic status of the countries or the host community will eventually be boosted, and then unemployment or underemployment is going to increase, and it will be an endemic. So meaning in this case, because some are being allowed to become citizens of the country and become residents, so you're going to see that there are going to be social segregation, and this continues in some countries. So UNHCR was calling upon the host countries, like even though you're saying that maybe, or you're thinking these people are taking over your jobs and you're remaining unemployed, or maybe you're not allowing these people because they're taking over your opportunities, like don't segregate them, because wherever they're coming from, they are being loved by those people. So you should also start loving them. And then these refugees by law entitled to the same socioeconomic rights as nationals. I've been talking about this. And then still on integration, UNHCR still say that integration is a continuum, like it doesn't stop the moment I enter into your country. Like it's supposed to be continuous until when maybe I go back to my country. It's not something that happens once and it stops. And continuing, there is a key aspect, there is a question that was asked at a point, and upon application for refugee status, after recognition of refugee status, and then upon granting of citizenship. So they were asking like, how can someone become a citizen? How can somebody continue having a refugee status from the moment they come into my country, and then as they want to be a citizen of the country, how they become a citizen? And in this convention, they were allowing these people to be like, if just in case I want to be a part of your country, Uganda, I want to become a citizen. All these questions were answered in this convention. And then every refugee is first and foremost an asylum seeker. A good reception policy for asylum seekers is therefore vital to the would-be refugee eventual integration in legal, psychosocial, psychological, and then social terms. It is in the best interest of both the host society and the asylum seekers and refugees to promote a reception policy with a long-term perspective. In this, they mean like you don't become a refugee immediately by the at the moment you step into the country. The documents are supposed to fill in first that make you all that entitled you to become a refugee in the beginning. As you enter into a country, you are just an asylum seeker. Not until you fill in these documents and eventually. And asylum seekers find themselves during the intermediate reception stage and therefore of important significance as regards to the future possibilities of integration. as time goes by and you filled in these documents, so later on, you're allowed to become a refugee, and then we start the integration process. And my next presenter will be talking about things that are done in the integration process. And then lastly, there is no one-size-fits-all approach to integration of the respective host society and with regard to the living and working conditions of nationals. However, it is also clear that international events, discourses, and frameworks have an important impact on the integration of refugees and respective policies at the national and the local level. Therefore, a number of broad goals of integration that apply across countries include efforts to enable refugees to reach and develop their full potential, to protect their human rights and prevent their marginalization, and then foster social cohesion. I submit.
Thank you very much, Sharon.
Abraham.
Well, thank you so much, Sharon, for the work done. Good afternoon, members. So this is Abraham. I'm going to take you to the next slides. So we managed to come out with the ways through which refugees can be integrated. So one of them is planning issues to consider. The aim of integration program is to ensure the Lesotho refugees have access to the same level and quality of services as the nationals, and that refugees come to feel part of their new community. As we know that when the refugees come into the host community, we have to, the government have to integrate, and non-organization have to integrate that refugee people with the nationals, so that they can be having the same services as the nationals do, like the same education, they have the same health services and other stuff that nationalists do have in their country. Another one is initiative to build a social support by volunteers programs. Yes, of course, volunteers fulfill the supplementary rather than a core integration functions. Involving volunteers in delivering services to refugees adds values to the services, create a broader social network, and foster a positive integration between Lesotho refugees and the wider community. For example, social and leisure activities support within language and befriending schemes. Of course, this is one of the initiatives that would welcome the refugees. They interact together. They even sometimes do go outside and do social activities, so that the community, the refugees will feel confidence and forget problems that drive them away from their country. Since we know that maybe somebody may be running away from political reasons, like as my fellow South Sudanese are, because since the war break out in South Sudan, they came into Uganda, and it has been there ever since. Uganda has been the host for South Sudanese, and he has accommodated them well. So another one is capacity building in refugees and diaspora communities. So this capacity building, the host community and government do build the capacity building so that they welcome the refugees. Like establishing refugees and diaspora community can help receive communities prepare for new arrivals, in addition to extending hospitality and support them. So local communities actors include faith-based group, community associations, and student association also play a critical welcoming and support roles. So we all know very well that we have local communities. Since our lecturer has been talking about it before, that if the host community has issues with the refugee, and then it will be terrible, because they must be the one now to welcome the refugee. But if they have issues again with the refugee, then there will be nowhere they can go. So these are whatever the capacity building that they do before, so that the local host or the community must be knowledgeable and must be friendly to welcome refugees and interact with them, doing businesses and other things without fear. Another one is we have building the capacity of sponsors. Community sponsors program provide an opportunity for individuals, local communities, and organizations to be directly engaged in the reception and integration of resorted refugees. Of course, by the time when the refugees come, this very much whatever program that been arranged by the government and also non-organizations to welcome refugees. By the time they arrive, there is at the arrival time, pardon?
Okay, it's okay, go on. I've muted the person.
Okay, at the arrival time, there's what we call a reception. This reception is a place where people are gathered before they are distributed to their settlement, where they are going to, maybe they like assuming when I went to West Nile one time, so I found different whatever settlement, and those settlement within that, like especially in Bidibidi, you find this category of whatever. There's the name the places according to the points. They say point A, point Y, point G, point whatever. So before the refugees are distributed, they first of all receive them in reception, and then they orient them, and also they interact the way that they will be interacting with with the host community, and then before they are released, after that they will be distributing when they are oriented. Another one is building the capacity of existing social support services at all stages of the integration process. Resettled refugees will have to contact with social services providers such as teachers and healthcare professionals and social workers. Of course, in this process, the government and an organization must be in position to provide teachers, also provide for health professionals and social workers, so that those who are in need in education will get education. Then people who are sick, they can be treated for free. Since the whatever medication is for free, it's like the government build the hospital for them. They also treat them like they are nationalists. We have good practice features. Overall, sound integration program would have engaged government, non-governmental agencies, and the refugees and wider communities in building social connections. As I said it before, that the government is the one that pay much whatever role, since it is the one that welcome the refugees, and then after that, when the government is willing to has already agreed to welcome refugees, then thereafter non-government organization will come, so that they will help out the problems. They will help out and come with the organization that can help communities based on health issues, and also based on education issues. Like most of South Sudanese now are getting sponsoring. They are getting good education. Some of them are taken now to whatever to Mabrara. Some are here in whatever in Kampala, and also those who are sick are treated. They can, if the sickness is big, then they can bring them here to Malago Hospital. So that's whatever that is. Refugees and promote well-being, increase use of the development regulation in a way that promotes family reunification is therefore likely to have positive impact on integration. We very well know that sometimes it is hard because these refugees are facing a lot of challenges because they left their country was a bad scenario whereby it may be go your way when you don't know where some other families are. So it is the whatever now, the duties of the government or the duties of the non-organization that welcomed and collaborate with government to see the challenges that are facing refugee, to see the way forward if they can come up with a way that for the when as I said that before, I went to Western Uganda, West Nile. So I found a certain guy who was reunited was his family because he didn't know, but the guy was so young. But with the link of non-organization, he made it clear because he passed a ball, made the history. They have to ask that boy, where were you and which place and which state of origin that you were in whatever in South Sudan. So the boy explained all the states, and then even the whatever certain things called Payam. Payam is like a parish. So the non-government organization followed the procedures until the boy was reunited with the family. So that's the goodness of it. And then we have private integration service to the asylum seekers. Time spent waiting around can damage refugees' chances of integrating, yet they often have to wait months or even years before receiving the language training in other integration support, such as skills assessments and civic integration courses. Countries which should both shorten the time it takes to assess the asylum application and provide earlier support to those who's likely to stay. Norway provide a good example in offering up 250 hours of language travel centers. We very well know that language barrier is the problems that face a lot of refugees in the camp or even in settlements. So before, as I was saying that when refugees are in reception, so there are some other refugees who are eager to learn a certain language. Like you can be eager to learn, like assuming most of the guys that are hosted by the community, most of the refugees are hosted by the Mahdi community. Or whatever, another clan. So praising them without difficulty or without being translated by someone. And then another one is, sorry, maybe I've forgotten the protocol. So just go to next slide where the deal with the mental and physical health issues earlier. Hello, Sharon.
It's
Hello?
where I am. It's where I am, Abraham.
You are there?
It's where I am. I don't know what's wrong with yours, but it's where I am.
Okay. So the refugees are particularly prone to mental health issues such as anxiety, depression following their often traumatic and violence experiences back home. And in flight, host countries should assess the mental health of newcomers alongside the physical evaluation, grant humanitarian immigrant access to regular healthcare and ensure they are able to use it. We very well know that during war, sometimes a lot of issues and stresses can come up. And embrace a lot of, embrace so many people. So PASA assess the people with the mental health. So that they can be treated. So that they can be comforted and they go to their normal whatever living. Next